Hello. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation today. Hey, I'm talking. Are you listening? So my name is Christy Corbin. I am currently the president and founder of Family Support Partners of Virginia, Inc. Most of you may know me from other Virginia Family Network trainings and events that I've been at and maybe presented at. And then also I am the former System of Care State Family Lead for the UMFS office in Richmond and was employed there since March of 2014. And as all grants do, they come to an end. And when that happened, our program in the Richmond office also ended. So in order to keep the Richmond area families continuing to have an option for a family support partner, I started my company so that we can continue doing that work. And I am very excited to talk with you today about communication. I think it's, of course, one of the most important things that we can do as human beings is to be able to engage in conversation with one another that allows us to share our thoughts and feelings. And that is something that I'm going to share with you today are just some strategies that I have found to be helpful for me. And I'll also note that I am not an expert in this. I just have practiced a lot of communication skills and in different environments and that sort of thing. So I wanted to share some of the thoughts that I've learned over the years about communicating, and I have pulled some information and resources from other places. So I hope that you find this helpful for you and maybe something, you might learn something new. I enjoy that piece of presenting is when light bulb moments happen, those aha moments. And so I'm hopeful that this is one of those today. So let's look at the definition. What is communication? So I know that we all have an idea. We know that in order to get our point across or to get what we need out of life, we have to convey that in some way to other people. And so according to dictionary.com, communication, one of the definitions is the imparting or interchange of thoughts, opinions, or information by speech, writing, or signs. So this just basically means that we are getting our thoughts across to someone else in different ways. It might be that I'm having a conversation verbally with you, or it might be that you are noticing someone's body language. It might be their facial expressions. It might be the way that they're standing or sitting, their posture. It might be that I'm writing you something. I might send you a letter in the mail. It might be an email. It might be that literally we're sitting beside each other and I write you a note. So there's all forms of communication. And then of course we get into folks who have different needs and how they communicate, like through technical assistance devices or American Sign Language, and even folks with different languages from ours. There's all forms of communication. And so I'm just going to talk about a little bit of those today. One of the things that stands out to me is it doesn't matter what type of relationship you're in, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's a relationship with a colleague, if it's a relationship with your neighbor, it does not matter what the relationship is. If you are not able to communicate your thoughts and feelings, then that relationship is not going to survive. And that is something that I've learned personally. I did a lot of raising of my children by myself for a lot of years. And then I met this wonderful man and he wanted to be a part of my life wholly. And that was one of the things that I struggled with, is opening up and really divulging my thoughts and feelings. So I know firsthand that communication is super important to a relationship. And for those of you who are in the either formal or informal roles as a parent leader, family support partner, parent peer supporter, peer recovery specialist, whatever your role might be in your life, that you have to communicate. You have to share what's going on so that you can best support those around you, whether it's your family members, it's your friends, it's someone that you're connected with professionally. We have to be able to communicate. And there's different types of communication styles that exist. And this is something that I've heard about over the years, but I really kind of delved into it a little bit for this presentation. And this information comes from Soul Salt Inc. It's a lady that does consulting and some trainings for communication. And from her website, soulsalt.com, which you'll see there at the bottom of the screen, there's 4 common communication styles. And one of them, the first one, is passive. So this is going to be the person who may not seem confident in their actually verbalizing what's going on. They may have difficulty making eye contact. They may be the person that just takes on all the tasks, all the duties. I'll do it. It's okay. So they have a hard time saying no. And then they're also the ones that'll they could kind of be wishy-washy, where they don't really take a stance on anything. They just kind of go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens. And they just, it's okay. You might hear them say, it doesn't matter that much, or I just want everyone to get along. So they're just going to pacify the situation to get through it, because they just don't have that confidence in themselves and how they communicate and express themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, there may also be physical piece of this where you see physically that they have poor posture, so that they're not exuding confidence as some other communication styles might. On the extreme of that is the aggressive communicator. And I'm sure that we've all experienced this person at one point in time. It's common. And so this is going to be the person who really doesn't give a lot of space for other people to talk. They're going to talk over you. They're going to make sure that their points get heard, or at least get said. They're going to be very controlling, a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of animation with their discussion and how they project themselves. They may not smile a lot. And this type of communication style, I don't have much patience for. It makes me very uncomfortable, and I don't like it when other people get hurt, and I don't like having my feelings hurt. So this is the type of communicator that I am probably not going to engage with too often. And if I do, I'm probably going to say something, because this is not okay. I don't appreciate this type of communication. However, there are some folks who this is how they communicate. And sometimes it might not be the way that they mean for things to come across, but it's what they know. And so that's how they express themselves. So the other piece is it's angry. They're angry, and they might criticize or intimidate. They might say things like, you're going to do this because I said so, or it's my way or the highway, or I'm right and you're wrong. So it's these types of communicators that people kind of shy away from. At least I do. I don't care much for this type of interaction with folks. And so I'm either going to say something to you, or I'm not going to communicate with you anymore. I'm going to remove myself from you because I don't like this type of interactions. The third style that's more common is the passive aggressive style. So this is going to be the one that they're going to say one thing, but then their body language or facial expressions are going to say something else. It's not going to jive. It's not going to be equal. And they kind of maybe you might start questioning, like, what are they talking about? Because what you just described isn't really what you're doing. And so you also might hear that they'll just make statements like, oh, fine, whatever, to whatever the situation might be at that time. And then also they may say something that hurts your feelings, or that hurts someone else's feelings, and you've observed that. And so then if you say something to them about it, they might say, well, I was only joking. Well, this is another communication style that I also don't have much patience for, because I don't come across intending to hurt anybody's feelings, and I'm not going to be the one to say things that is harmful. I want to be able to communicate with someone. I want to be able to have a shared relationship with them. And this type of passive aggressive style is not something that that I do well with either. But also the point there about difficulty acknowledging emotions, I think what that relates to, from my perspective, is that the individual also may not have confidence in themselves, and they also may feel like they need to be on the defensive first. Like they might need to set the stage of, I'm here, I'm controlling this situation. You're not going to get one over on me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to do this first. So, this type of communicator sometimes can be difficult to be around as well. Where I like to be in the conversations that I truly enjoy having are from the assertive communicator. So this is the person who's going to exude confidence. They're going to allow for an actual conversation where they're going to maybe ask a question and then allow you the opportunity to answer it. And even if I might not like what you're saying, I'm going to let you finish your statement, because you might come around to something and, I might have a question about what you're saying, but I want to allow you the opportunity to explain yourself and like get your idea out and your full thought, so that, we're not arguing, because that's not helpful either. And it's not something that I enjoy doing. I feel like I've come a long way in life, that I feel like I fit under the assertive communication style. And so these bullet points really spoke to me. The use of I statements. I know that those of us who've been through some of the Virginia Family Network trainings over the years, the I statements are huge. And not just the VFN trainings, but also some of the NAMI programs like Family to Family and NAMI Basics. They also teach you about I statements. So when you bring it back, the attention to yourself, your feelings, your thoughts, your perspective, and you convey your information from I feel, I think, I believe, those types of statements, it keeps people from feeling offended, and for where they want to continue communicating with you and they want to be part of that conversation, because you're not blaming them, you're not pointing your finger, you're not telling them what they might be doing wrong. It's a way of saying, I think this, and now want to know what you think. Also having the ability to say no. So this is where, like the passive communication style, they may have been more wishy-washy and not really being able to take a stance. They just wanted to get through it. They just want everybody to get along. They want things to just happen, get it over with. However, the assertive type communicator, they're going to be the one to say, no, I don't think that's going to be the way that we should do this. What about this? Or no, I don't think that that's going to be effective. So if you just listen to what I was actually saying, I was using I statements and not saying, no, you're wrong about that. That's more of an aggressive communicator style. So, and also the biggest piece about an assertive communicator is having good eye contact, because that's one of the ways that you show folks that you're actually engaged and that you truly want to hear what they have to say and you're interested in them. We also, the perspective of assertive communicators, they might say, we all have the right to express ourselves respectfully and honestly. And this is something that also stands out to me, because people's opinions differ. And that's what makes this world go around, is we're all different. If we were all the same, we all thought the same, we all felt the same, then it would be kind of boring. So having differences of opinions is how life is supposed to be. The key to being able to have good communication is being able to respect the other person's perspective, their opinions, their thoughts, their culture, their lifestyles. It doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It's just a matter of being respectful of them. And then for me personally, as I'm respecting you, your lifestyle, your thought processes, all these things, I expect that in return. I expect to have being respected for my own opinions and not being cut down because you don't agree with me. Great that you don't agree with me. Let's have a conversation about that. And that could be a whole nother presentation about conflict resolution and conflict management, because that's another piece of communicating, is being able to disagree. So these are some of the 4 of the more common communication styles. And I hope that, again, that you'll pick up some key points from these to take back and think about and maybe implement some of the strategies that I've referenced here. Another thing that I want you to think about is this quote: "Everything becomes a little different as soon as it is spoken out loud." I giggle about this one because I'm sure you've experienced it too, where you're getting ready to go to some meeting, or you have to do a presentation, or you're just hanging out and having coffee with a friend. Well, you might have run through some ideas and thoughts that you wanted to express, and maybe you've had that conversation in your mind a couple of times, and then you actually get with that person or in front of that audience, and when you say the things, it doesn't quite come out the way that you had made it up in your mind of how they were going to be said. So this is just something else to think about too, that when you think about something, you might think about it in one certain aspect, but then when you say it out loud, it might come across a little different. So I think it's going to be really helpful to be aware of you and your facial expressions, your body language, how you convey the words, and what you're actually saying. And then also a piece of this about communicating is being okay with saying, "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean for it to come across that way. Let me rephrase that. Let me say that again." Asking for forgiveness and allowing yourself that grace to say, "I was wrong. I didn't mean it that way." And so also when someone does that to you, giving them the grace to be able to correct what they meant to say, because sometimes our emotions might get ahead of us and we truly did not mean to say it that way. I truly meant to say it in a more positive, strength-based manner. It just came out wrong, because sometimes our tongues move faster than our brains do. So just being aware that grace is another virtue to have, to be able to show others as well as yourself, and being okay with saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't get that right. Let me say that again." So just something else to ponder about communication. So I want to share this video with you. Some of you who've been around with me for a while, you may have seen this video before. I came across it several years ago, and it just really spoke to me. Celeste Headley is a journalist and an author and a speaker and a musician. She has a website if you want to look up her and see all the things that she's done. But she is a professional interviewer, I think is how she referred to herself. And so she gives some ideas of how to have a better conversation. So I want us to watch this video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. And this is a little bit lengthy. It's almost 12 minutes, but I feel certain that you will be very engaged. I love the way that she describes things, and it's a little humorous. So I hope you enjoy this.
All right, I want to see a show of hands. How many of you have unfriended someone on Facebook because they said something offensive about politics or religion, childcare, food? And how many of you know at least one person that you avoid because you just don't want to talk to them? It used to be that in order to have a polite conversation, we just had to follow the advice of Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady: stick to the weather and your health. But these days, with climate change and anti-vaxxing, those subjects are not safe either. So this world that we live in, this world in which every conversation has the potential to devolve into an argument, where our politicians can't speak to one another, and where even the most trivial of issues have someone fighting both passionately for it and against it, it's not normal. Pew Research did a study of 10,000 American adults, and they found that at this moment, we are more polarized, we are more divided than we ever have been in history. We're less likely to compromise, which means we're not listening to each other, and we make decisions about where to live, who to marry, and even who our friends are going to be based on what we already believe. Again, that means we're not listening to each other. A conversation requires a balance between talking and listening, and somewhere along the way we lost that balance. Now, part of that is due to technology, the smartphones that you all either have in your hands or close enough that you could grab them really quickly. According to Pew Research, about 1/3 of American teenagers send more than 100 texts a day. And many of them, almost most of them, are more likely to text their friends than they are to talk to them face to face. There's this great piece in The Atlantic. It was written by a high school teacher named Paul Barnwell. And he gave his kids a communication project. He wanted to teach them how to speak on a specific subject without using notes. And he said this: I came to realize that conversational competence might be the single most overlooked skill we fail to teach. Kids spend hours each day engaging with ideas and each other through screens, but rarely do they have an opportunity to hone their interpersonal communication skills. It might sound like a funny question, but we have to ask ourselves, is there any 21st century skill more important than being able to sustain coherent, confident conversation? Now, I make my living talking to people. Nobel Prize winners, truck drivers, billionaires, kindergarten teachers, heads of state, plumbers. I talk to people that I like. I talk to people that I don't like. I talk to some people that I disagree with deeply on a personal level, but I still have a great conversation with them. So I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes or so teaching you how to talk and how to listen. Many of you have already heard a lot of advice on this. Things like look the person in the eye, think of interesting topics to discuss in advance, nod and smile to show that you're paying attention. Repeat back what you just heard or summarize it. So I want you to forget all of that. It is crap. There is no reason to learn how to show you're paying attention if you are, in fact, paying attention. Now, I actually use the exact same skills as a professional interviewer that I do in regular life. So I'm going to teach you how to interview people, and that's actually going to help you learn how to be better conversationalists. Learn to have a conversation without wasting your time, without getting bored, and please God, without offending anybody. We've all had really great conversations. We've had them before. We know what it's like. The kind of conversation where you walk away feeling engaged and inspired, or where you feel like you've made a real connection or you've been perfectly understood. There is no reason why most of your interactions can't be like that. So I have 10 basic rules. I'm going to walk you through all of them, but honestly, if you just choose one of them and master it, you're already going to enjoy better conversations. Number 1, don't multitask. And I don't mean just set down your cell phone or your tablet or your car keys or whatever's in your hand. I mean, be present. Be in that moment. Don't be thinking about your argument you have with your boss. Don't be thinking about what you're going to have for dinner. If you want to get out of the conversation, get out of the conversation. But don't be half in it and half out of it. Number 2, don't pontificate. If you want to just state your opinion without any opportunity for response or argument or pushback or growth, write a blog. Now, there's a really good reason why I don't allow pundits on my show, because they're really boring. If they're a conservative, they're going to hate Obama and food stamps and abortion. If they're a liberal, they're going to hate big banks and oil corporations and Dick Cheney. Totally predictable. And you don't want to be like that. You need to enter every conversation assuming that you have something to learn. The famed therapist Eb Scott Peck said that true listening requires a setting aside of oneself. And sometimes that means setting aside your personal opinion. He said that sensing this acceptance, the speaker will become less and less vulnerable and more likely to open up the inner recesses of his or her mind to the listener. Again, assume that you have something to learn. Bill Nye, everyone you will ever meet knows something that you don't. I put it this way: everybody is an expert in something. Number 3, use open-ended questions. In this case, take a cue from journalists. Start your questions with who, what, where, when, why, or how. If you put in a complicated question, you're going to get a simple answer out. If I ask you, were you terrified? You're going to respond to the most powerful word in that sentence, which is terrified, and the answer is, yes, I was, or no, I wasn't. Were you angry? Yes, I was very angry. Let them describe it. They're the ones that know. Try asking them things like, what was that like? How did that feel? Because then they might have to stop for a moment and think about it, and you're gonna get a much more interesting response. Number 4, go with the flow. That means thoughts will come into your mind, and you need to let them go out of your mind. We've heard interviews often in which a guest is talking for several minutes and then the host comes back in and asks a question which seems like it comes out of nowhere or it's already been answered. That means the host probably stopped listening 2 minutes ago because he thought of this really clever question and he was just bound and determined to say that. And we do the exact same thing. We're sitting there having a conversation with someone and then we remember that time that we met Hugh Jackman in a coffee shop. And we stop listening. Stories and ideas are going to come to you. You need to let them come and let them go. Number 5, if you don't know, say that you don't know. Now, people on the radio, especially on NPR, are much more aware that they're going on the record. And so they're more careful about what they claim to be an expert in and what they claim to know for sure. Do that. Err on the side of caution. Talk should not be cheap. Number 6, don't equate your experience with theirs. If they're talking about having lost a family member, don't start talking about the time that you lost a family member. If they're talking about the trouble that they're having at work, don't tell them about how much you hate your job. It's not the same. It is never the same. All experiences are individual. And more importantly, it is not about you. You don't need to take that moment to prove how amazing you are or how much you've suffered. Somebody asked Stephen Hawking once what his IQ was, and he says, I have no idea. People who brag about their IQs are losers. Conversations are not a promotional opportunity. Number 7, try not to repeat yourself. It's condescending and it's really boring. And we tend to do it a lot, especially in work conversations or in conversations with our kids. We have a point to make, so we just keep rephrasing it over and over. Don't do that. Number 8, stay out of the weeds. Frankly, people don't care about the years, the names, the dates, all those details that you're struggling to come up with in your mind. They don't care. What they care about is you. They care about what you're like, what you have in common. So forget the details. Leave them out. Number 9, this is not the last one, but it is the most important one. Listen. I cannot tell you how many really important people have said that listening is perhaps the number one most important skill that you could develop. Buddha said, and I'm paraphrasing, if your mouth is open, you're not learning. And Calvin Coolidge said, no man ever listened his way out of a job. Why do we not listen to each other? Number 1, we'd rather talk. When I'm talking, I'm in control. I don't have to hear anything I'm not interested in. I'm the center of attention. I can bolster my own identity. But there's another reason. We get distracted. The average person talks at about 225 words per minute, but we can listen at up to 500 words per minute. So our minds are filling in those other 275 words. And look, I know it takes effort and energy to actually pay attention to someone. But if you can't do that, you're not in a conversation. You're just two people shouting out barely related sentences in the same place. You have to listen to one another. Stephen Covey said it very beautifully. He said, most of us don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply. One more rule, and number 10, and it's this one. Be brief. All of this boils down to the same basic concept, and it is this one. Be interested in other people. You know, I grew up with a very famous grandfather, and there was kind of a ritual in my home. People would come over to talk to my grandparents, and after they would leave, my mother would come over to us, and she'd say, do you know who that was? She was the runner-up to Miss America. He was the mayor of Sacramento. She won a Pulitzer Prize. He's a Russian ballet dancer. And I kind of grew up assuming everyone has some hidden amazing thing about them. And honestly, I think it's what makes me a better host. I keep my mouth shut as often as I possibly can. I keep my mind open, and I'm always prepared to be amazed, and I'm never disappointed. You do the same thing. Go out, talk to people, listen to people, and most importantly, be prepared to be amazed. Thanks.
So that was Celeste Headley. Her presentation, I always learn something from it every time I watch it. And I've listed out her 10 ways here on this slide to kind of give you a reference if you'd like to look back at it at some point. The don't multitask, be present is one of the things that I've learned and always stands out to me is if you truly want to be in a conversation with somebody, then be in the conversation with somebody. If you truly want to hear what they have to say, then don't be distracted. Sometimes we might hold a pen, you might actually have a piece of paper in your hand. So those of us who might be in formal support positions and are actually engaging with folks to learn about them, you might take notes and that sort of thing. But in a general terms, when you're in a conversation with somebody, it's more likely that you're not going to have those types of things. You're going to actually be looking at them. And I also find it funny how she was referencing the reflective listening, the eye contact, the head nods, and that sort of thing to show that you're engaged. And she says those are all crap. I believe those things matter. And I think she was saying that tongue in cheek also. But I think that it's important that we do actually, when you use those open-ended questions to get someone to start talking, you might need to ask clarifying questions. You might need to say, I thought I heard you say this, is that correct? Or what I heard you say was this, and this is what I think about that. Did I get that right? Or, really making sure that you are engaged in that conversation, because that'll help the person she was referencing too, help them feel more vulnerable, safer, that they can actually open up and say more. Especially if you're not blaming and shaming them or judging them in any way based off of their perspectives, then you're going to have a richer conversation and actually a two-way communication where you're going to each be sharing your thoughts and feelings and observations and that sort of thing. The other part, number 5, if you don't know, say that you don't know. I think that's really important too, because when people are asking you about a subject, and if you're well versed in it, of course you're going to share all the information that you can and that you choose to share. But if you don't know about it, then I'm not sure about that, but I could look it up and find out for you. That's something that I practice regularly, because I don't want people to think, like she was referencing, talk is cheap. I don't want people to think that I'm just saying things just to make myself look better. Like if you're asking me for something in our conversation and I truly don't know, I'm going to say I don't know, and that's going to give you more clout with that person. They're going to respect you more because they don't feel like that you're just yanking their chain. The other part, number 6, don't equate your experience with theirs. I think this is, again, referencing more general conversations. When you're in a formal support role, that's part of what we do, is we do share our experiences with them. But the key to that is it's not about you. It's not the time for you to glorify and show all the great and wonderful things that you did to get through that really yucky time. This is where strategic storytelling comes into play when you're in a formal support role. So that's just something that I wanted to point out too, that what she's referencing is more for general conversations, having effective communications with other folks. The experience sharing is more in a formal role that we are familiar with, some of us are, in supporting others. But the biggest thing that is so important is to actually listen. When you enter into a conversation with someone, it's expected that you actually want to hear what they have to say. So truly listening to them is going to matter. And again, not being in this conversation because you want to respond. You want to get all of your thoughts and ideas out on the table. You truly want to hear what the other person is saying. That's what the communication styles that I was referencing earlier, that's where the assertive communication style comes into play. Is I have an opinion, I know that you have an opinion, and I want to hear yours and I want you to hear mine. And so that's going to be our two-way conversation. That's where we're actually going to not be those two people in the same room just shouting sentences across each other. It's actually going to be a true conversation, sharing and engaging with one another. So another thing that might help you remember the thoughts that Celeste was sharing in her video is this acronym SOUL. So it stands for silence, observation, understanding, listening. And if you have been through the high fidelity wraparound support partner training, you've seen this before too, because this is so important as a support partner, as well as a parent leader, in that learning how to stop talking will open up avenues for you to learn so much. One of the biggest pieces is asking those open-ended questions to allow people to actually respond with an answer, and then you sitting quietly and allowing them to respond. So that's the big piece about silence, is it's not about you. So when you start a conversation and you want to be quiet so that the person can talk, and then again, that's the respective reciprocal communication style is of the assertive type, is that I'm going to sit quietly while you talk also. So I want to be able to be heard. I want to hear what you have to say. And so we can actually have that open dialogue. The observation piece, that's not only going to be about the person's facial expressions, maybe their voice, how they are saying the words, whether they're really excited about it or they're kind of down about the situation, the topic that they're discussing, but also their body language as a whole. Are they sitting closed? Like, are their arms crossed? Are their legs crossed? Are they maybe fiddling with something in their hands? Or are they more open, where maybe they're kind of fiddling with their coffee cup, or maybe they are kind of laid back in the chair, maybe they've got their hands clasped behind their heads. Is their body language open or closed? Because that'll kind of give you an insight into where they are emotionally as they're talking about this subject, whatever it might be. And then also the environment around them. So for example, let's say you're at someone's home, and again, this can be a family member, a friend, it doesn't matter. But what is their environment like? Is it calm in that area, or is it chaotic? Are there toys everywhere? Or are there children running around playing or watching TV? Or are there pets running and jumping, or pets laying over sleeping? About other people. Are there other people in the room or in the home? And then kind of putting all of that together, the environment along with the person's body language and facial expressions and voice inflection, what is that telling you? There could be other things going on. And so that's just a way for you as a communicator to continue that open dialogue, is by reading the bigger picture as you are listening to what the person is saying. So those are just some things to think about through the observation. It's bigger than just the eye contact. There's more to that piece of it. And then also understanding. This is, again, where Celeste Headley in her video made a funny about the reflective listening and active listening, where she was talking about, the head nod or repeating back what you heard. I believe those things are important. And I think that that's a way to show the other person that you are truly engaged with them. And it also keeps us out of assuming that we know what the person is talking about and what they're trying to convey. If I say things like, oh gosh, I think I heard you say this. Did I get that right? And that they might have, again, said something out loud and they didn't mean for it to come across that way. So that gives them the opportunity to rephrase it, or just making sure that you truly understood what they said. Like maybe you did kind of venture out, like thoughts came into your mind and you got stuck with one of them. So maybe you did miss the whole statement that they had just said. So asking for clarification is important because again, that allows the talker to know that you are truly listening to them. And this whole listening thing, this is this is the biggest piece about communicating with people is you want to hear what they have to say. You want to truly listen for understanding. You truly want to um, allow them to be able to get their words out, their thoughts, their ideas, because a true conversation, an open dialogue, the positive communication style, this is where you want to hear what they have to say, not waiting for an opportunity for you to respond, or because you have a thought come into your mind, then you talk over them in that aggressive style of communication. You want to hear what they have to say, and you want to be heard too. So you want to make sure that they're listening to you. So if you can foster this conversation in a way that is comfortable, that is engaging, that is non-judgmental, then the person is going to continue talking with you, and you guys will have that open dialogue and sharing of thoughts. Um, I love the statement that Celeste said, listen with the intent to understand. I think that is the biggest piece, because when you engage in conversation with somebody, that usually means that you truly want to learn about them. You want to know what's going on. Maybe if you're in a helping type role, that you want to know how you can best help. And even if it's not a formal role that you're supporting someone, it could be a friend, it could be a family member. You just want to truly understand from their perspective what's happening so that you can be the best supporter that you can be for them. So again, just the acronym SOUL, something that to keep in mind: silence, observation, understanding, listening. This is how you can have a better conversation with folks and to keep the lines of communication open. One of the last two thoughts that I want to leave with you, I love this quote. It really kind of makes me think. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. So you think you said something, or you think that you conveyed your thought, your perspective, your opinion in a way that people should be able to understand. But maybe they didn't. Maybe they had that puppy dog head tilt when when you say something and they're not quite sure what you were saying, or didn't understand your intention behind your words, or maybe they didn't get it. And so that's also a way of being comfortable with um, asking the question as the speaker: did what I say resonate with you, or did I hope that what I stated came across the way I intended? Did you have any questions about it, or I really meant for that to be a positive statement? I didn't mean for that to be something hurtful. And so really asking the other person, did you get that? Like, did it come across the way that I meant for it to? Because sometimes we might say things and then just walk off or tune out, and the other person did not pick up on what we were actually saying. So also you might truly think that you communicated. You may have thought you sent that text message in response, but maybe you didn't. So this is just something else to think about too, is when we assume that we actually conveyed what we meant to say and that it really didn't get conveyed appropriately, that can wreak havoc on a conversation in a relationship. Because remember, communication is the biggest key to establishing and maintaining relationships. So if we're not clearly communicating or appropriately communicating, then the relationship is probably not going to be all that it could be. And the last thought that I want to leave you with is a Chinese proverb that I read many years ago, and it has stuck with me over the years because it speaks so perfectly to the work that I do and the desire that I have to help others, support others, encourage others, to know the road ahead as those coming back. So those who've already been through it, to help other folks understand what's on the other side, where that light at the end of the tunnel is. And the biggest piece to this is ask. So you have to communicate. You have to convey the information. For me, I had to ask a lot of questions to figure out where the answers were or where the options were, how to find this or know where that thing is, or I had to actually communicate with people. So this proverb stood out for me for a multitude of reasons, and I try to share it with as many people as I can because I think it just kind of speaks to the work that we do as parent leaders. It speaks to the work that we do as formal support partners. It speaks to the work that we do in our everyday lives, regardless of what it is. Educators, uh, law enforcement, firefighters, emergency medical services, we all have to communicate. So this is a quote that, or a proverb that I like to leave folks with, because it's all about communication and expressing ideas and thoughts and suggestions and all of those things. So thank you all again for taking the time out to watch this presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you got something out of it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.